79% of Australians are actually cutting down on something to save money, whilst more than half of those consumers are looking for the best value when they shop. So the fun part for brands to try and figure out is understanding what those consumers value. And we know that in this sensitive market, consumers do really value discounts, but they also value customer service, and they also value loyalty, and they also value differentiation and early access and those sorts of things. So how are you differentiating yourself? If you're not differentiated on your customer service angle, then really you've got no differentiation in market, and you're going to have a really hard time standing out.
Hello and welcome. I'm Elizabeth Formosa, the founder of Fashion Equipped and devourer of all things fashion, business and mindset. In this podcast, I'm speaking with thought leaders, change makers and entrepreneurs about the business side of fashion and everything in between. Fashion Business Mindset is your front row seat to real stories from designers, brands, entrepreneurs, makers and mentors. We'll discuss how to launch and grow a fashion business and give you insider access to the future of fashion. So let's do this together and ensure that you're equipped to make the fashion business your business. Welcome back to Fashion Business Mindset. Today, I'm thrilled to have Jordy Heis joining us. Jordy is Shopify's Senior Retail Product Consultant for Australia and New Zealand, where he drives growth and retention for retail merchants across the region. Known for his expertise, Jordy has become a trusted advisor to some of the most dynamic, category-leading fashion brands, including Inku, Patagonia, LSKD, Frankie 4 and Henny. With a background as a graphic designer turned data enthusiast, Jordy brings a unique blend of artistry and analytical skills to help brands succeed. He's passionate about helping businesses leverage both design and data to grow strategically in the competitive e-commerce space. In today's conversation, Jordy shares invaluable insights into scaling e-commerce brands, building a compelling brand identity, the evolving role of technology in retail, exciting developments from the frontline at Shopify, and so much more. So let's dive in. Jordy, welcome to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast.
Thanks, Liz. So good to see you and great to be here.
Same. Can't wait to dive into what you've been doing over the last few years. But before we do, just to set the scene for our audience, can we kick off by you sharing a little bit about your background and your journey to becoming such a trusted advisor to fast-growing brands at Shopify?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like many folks, it wasn't a straight line to where we are today, but I think it makes sense to share my love of brand and design, and retail was ingrained in me from a pretty early age. So I grew up in the coastal town in the Ballerine Peninsula of Ocean Grove, and my pretty core foundational memories were, jumping on my push bike and riding for 20, 30 Ks to Torquay, which is the home of surfing. So brands like Rip Curl and Quicksilver originated there. And I just loved putting those newest brochures and catalogs in my backpack and furiously riding home so that I could get back and recreate them on my Bondi Blue iMac computer of the time. So I just loved design, and I loved what retail in that sense stood for. So surfing for me in that time and generation was huge. So my professional career, I took my piece of paper from RMIT, went and worked in a small design shop. And whilst it was fun, it was my dream sort of leaving high school. Sort of 6 months into it, I was moving these pixels around a page and I couldn't quite understand why I was doing it. So I was like, I've got to do something here, sort of early 20s crisis. And the next day I enrolled at marketing at night school and just wanted to open up that other side of my brain and in my opinion become more valuable and interesting as an operator. And I was just curious, right? I wanted to understand why I was doing all of these things. So if I fast forward through some of the lifestyle jobs that I had, including slinging snow tours in Japan and designing music festival posters in the Greek islands, I came home from overseas and didn't have much money, but I thought I had some skills and I wanted to apply them. So I started my own graphic design shop and small marketing house where I was building a bunch of websites. And back when AdWords bidding was 50 cents and SEO tactics were a little bit questionable, I really enjoyed cutting my teeth and helping, brands grow and succeed. So, but the trend that I really saw at that time was e-commerce seemed achievable. And I loved these brands coming in saying, hey, we want to transition from a blog or a catalog site to e-commerce and, really start to transact. And previously it had just been unachievable for small businesses to build a fully fledged e-commerce site and transact. So I decided to parlay those skills and found a couple of co-founders that felt there was a similar opportunity and need in the market. And we created a dedicated e-commerce agency and we built a bunch of e-commerce sites for a lot of fashion houses. Most prominently probably was Zane Rowe, a fast fashion brand out of Sydney. And again, what I just really loved was e-commerce was so accountable to the numbers, right? So I'd grown up with design and it was, you could build these beautiful websites that looked awesome and amazing and, you could aspire for awards, but if they weren't performant, then you've got an issue, you've got a problem. So I just loved the transparency and the ability to build something that could, again, create all these sales and opportunities for small business owners. So that was a really foundational, but incredible time for me in my journey. So again, a couple of years later, I was enjoying what I was doing, but I got tapped on the shoulder from Shopify's head of partnerships. And he said, hey, why don't you come and do what you're doing for us? Be one of the early foundational members at Shopify in Australia. And it seems crazy, but at the time that seemed like a bit of a risk. I thought I was trending towards joining a local Melbourne fashion brand that I really, respected. And I thought I was trending that way, but just the ability to have influence and have a vehicle where I could work on more, complex growth challenges, have access to really interesting operators behind those brands and work with brands that I always aspired to, touch, feel and see. It just was an opportunity, too good to miss. So, pretty quickly I was working with the Inquires and Patagonias and Saturday NYCs of the world, which I loved and aspired to as a consumer. And that was 7+ years ago and haven't looked back since.
Now you've got Shopify running through the veins, Jordy.
Absolutely. Bleeding green, that's for sure.
I love that you've got the creative background. I love that you're a brand guy. I think that in the e-commerce space, sometimes it can be very heavily weighted towards the performance marketing, and there can be some lacking around the brand side of things. So I think that you've got that powerful balance of the creative with the analytical side, which I just think for obviously the brands you're working with is a very powerful combination. So let's talk about your role at Shopify. So 7 years, you'd said it's been?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been for the first half of my journey at Shopify. I was a merchant success manager, so essentially, an account manager that works strategically with merchants to help them, fully realize the value of Shopify and unwrap all the tools and features and really understand how to drive it and hopefully build, strategies that align with their planning and growth. And come May 2021, we commercialized our retail offering in Australia. So, probably many of your listeners would know that, Shopify is, best in breed in e-commerce. I'm biased, but it's pretty popular out there. But we also have a point of sale platform. Again, once we had an integrated card reader, we could commercialize in Australia. So once we did that at that time, bit tricky given those COVID periods, but it was time to get in there and really build the foundations to where we are today. So now I sit in a role that's called a senior retail product consultant, and I work with our largest brands in ANZ to help them again understand what we're building for. So, things like sitting in executive business reviews and showing them product roadmaps and making sure that their focuses and their resources can align to where we're building. They can see again where we're building, but maybe where we're not, where it makes sense to work with an agency partner or deploy a third-party app. So pretty fun role from a strategic advisory. I suppose other two critical functions from a day-to-day perspective is winning new business. So, again, the point of sale platform is new in Australia. We're quickly stretching up market, but again, working cross-functionally with our teams across merchant success, sales, and marketing to identify those opportunities of, a lot of brands that are on Shopify, but might have physical stores that aren't yet on our point of sale platform. And also those that are sort of net new on other platforms and, understanding that Shopify can be this one unified experience. So that's a
Mm.
really fun part. Opportunity identification part. The last part, probably the most fun part of my job, is turning on early access to new features for merchants and giving them new Christmas presents like new hardware that were released earlier this year. So being able to have a beautiful countertop solution for our point of sale merchants that gives them a fully customer facing display, even the ability to sell mobile, right? So just
Yep.
a couple of weeks ago we released tap to pay on mobile. So if you've got a mobile phone, you've got a point of sale, which is really creating some interesting conversations around buying psychology and customer experience. And we're speaking to a lot of brands that are completely thinking about how do we redesign this store in a way that makes sense in today's age with technology that's commoditized and easily available. So an interesting and diverse role, and yeah, really enjoying it.
Amazing. So before we dive into all of the amazing work that you're doing with the brands, and you're the good news guy delivering all of the new solutions, which is very cool, a cool position to be in. What has your career path been like in terms of your development? Because you mentioned earlier that, you made this decision to go to Shopify, and you felt like it was a bit of a risk at the time. You're at those
Mm.
crossroads. But no doubt, I mean, you're at the cutting edge of everything that's happening in the e-com space. And I know that you'd been to a big conference with Shopify not too long ago. But so what's it been like for you working in such a globally leading organization?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I think it feels at times we're like this sort of satellite office to what is HQ. So
Yeah.
Shopify, HQ is in Canada. So Shopify is 10,000 plus employees. And whilst we have, a solid, hundreds and hundreds number in Australia, and we operate with innovation and, obviously authenticity in
Yeah.
market, it's an incredible ability to showcase best in breed technology to merchants that want and need it. We know that in Australia and some of obviously your listeners on the podcast, we're such an entrepreneurial type of mindset and culture here in Australia and New Zealand. So to give them tools that they can leverage and operate their business, it's super impressive. So if I think of Shopify and what I love about it, it's such a learner's paradise. I even speak to folks that transition into the next thing in their career journey. The thing they often say they miss the most is the ability and the I suppose the recognition to spend time learning and to spend time developing yourself and creating personal development plans so you're growing individually as in sync with the business. So we are really set up for success, and that's when you have so many whip smart people around you, it's sort of hard not to be risen up by some smart folks around you, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's switch channels then. Let's talk about the amazing brands that you're working with. You've mentioned a few of them. So Inku, Patagonia, LSKD, Frankie 4, and Henny. That's just a few of the leading fashion brands that you're working with. Can we kind of dive into some of the key strategies that these brands have implemented to scale successfully in the e-com space? And I know that's a very broad question, but
Mm.
maybe we could hone in on some of the strategies and implementations that you've been part of, Jordy. You've already mentioned quite a few of them. Yeah, but what are the ones that come to mind immediately where you've seen just, swift impact with these brands?
Yeah, I'm gonna be the boring guy that steps back from e-commerce specifically, and I was looking at some of the pillars of your start your own fashion business course,
Yep.
and really any business that does well is it does the core fundamentals right. So Shopify at the end of the day is a platform that can execute, but unless you've got those operational efficiencies and values alignment and of those key things working for you in the business, then a platform is just going to amplify what you're doing, whether that's good or bad. So I think the three key things that as I was reflecting on this was, again, it's cash management and profitability. Fashion work with so many fashion businesses over the journey where it's so easy to have a creatively led founders that sort of said, hey, we'll make this, it'll go gangbusters, and we'll figure out the numbers later. But it's just it's not the way to operate. If you want to have success and sustainability and build something that's going to give you the financial reward and freedom that you're after, you need to be super across those numbers from a cost of goods and marketing costs and things like that. And I've really enjoyed listening to both Paul Waddy and Jay Ryder, previous guests on the podcast, and drilling into the economics of what that looks like. Benchmarks are benchmarks. They're objective, but subjectively, you need to make sure they make sense for you. So it was incredibly, I'm happy to see that cash management and profitability is a key part of what you are about. The next thing I would say is marketing clarity. So it's easy for startups and even scale ups not to really delineate what their marketing is doing. So it's so easy to focus on acquisition and getting new customers in, but looking at what happens from a conversion side and particularly a retention side. So I'm biased from a merchant success and retention lens. I just think it's so often not talked about. It's not the sexiest thing to talk about. But it costs 7 times less than it does to drive new activation and new sales through existing customers than getting new customers in the door. So I think that's just so misunderstood. The brands that really drive that customer lifetime value are the ones that win. And one again, it's not sexy to talk about, but inventory planning. If you don't have stock that's available when your buyers want it, then you're going to have a lot of pain. You're leaving so much profits and so much opportunity on the table. And I think I've seen just so many businesses run into trouble, and they're even thinking about air freight versus shipping freight and all of these complex issues because they haven't planned and managed it from the start. And we get that things will go viral and you can't always control what out of stock looks like, but the better you can control that, the more sustainable the journey that you'll have.
Yeah, well, you're definitely speaking my language. So you've got the cash and the profit. Absolutely got to know your numbers and manage them very intimately. The marketing clarity and inventory planning. And they're all key topics on fashion business mindset, which I absolutely love. Are there any examples that you could share based on those leading brands that you're working with, based on any one of those pillars? Is there something that comes to mind where you can share? Yep, that was a strategy and that led to scalability, or it might have been a campaign that was super successful.
Yeah, so there's a couple that I'll share. And as I've sort of mentioned, my first role was in merchant success. It was driving, online direct consumer activation. And I want to be, crystal clear. I'm not taking all the credit for this. It's the brands that activate it, that pull the levers, but to play a small part in it and see their journey and their success is, I take a lot of pride in that. So a brand that I work quite closely with even still today is InQ. So they're, a retail led business, quite strong. You've likely seen the orange bag, wandering around the shopping malls. So they came on to Shopify Plus. They're really looking to optimize and lift the elevation of their website to what they felt was, I suppose, symbolic of what was best in breed, the experiences they delivered in store, which is always super hard, particularly if you're starting from a retail led lens. But being able to work with them quite closely and identify levers, help them open and activate new features on our platform. They saw their conversion rates go up nearly 80%. They boosted their annual sales by 300% after replatforming to Shopify Plus. So that was, pretty phenomenal. And that was because, again, the leaders in the business knew that online was a priority, and then they were able to, again, activate that and reap that reward before, again, that little pandemic hit and they needed to shift their focus to online. So that was incredible to see, and I take a lot of pride in that activation. Another one is from a point of sale or a retail lens is a brand called Elite 11. So they're a sports and lifestyle brand based in Melbourne. A couple of great founders, Ben and Liz. So they started out as a wholesale brand before they quickly shifted to direct to consumer and selling online. And when it was time, again, post-pandemic, to shift into physical retail, they boost their in-store sales on an annual basis by 240%, from their previous platform. So again, they wanted to really drive a harmonious and a remarkable in-store experience, the one that they delivered from an online perspective. And I think they're sort of 10 stores and plus and really thriving. So again, full credit to the brands that activate this and drive their growth, but it's been really cool to work with those owners and play a small part in it.
Amazing. Can we touch a little bit deeper on the point of sale in store? Because I actually heard you on another podcast talking about bed footwear as well, and just the mobile. So being able to have a device and like be able to free range around a store and be able to transact not at the counter. So there's a lot of it's not we're talking about ecom. Well, when you talk about Shopify, it's like ecom comes to mind, but it's more than that now. Should we touch on that for our listeners, Jordy? Because I think that's really powerful.
It's a conversation I'm having with a lot of our merchants. All of us at Shopify are. So we realized that post-pandemic, the reversion of what customers wanting to purchase in store was really prevalent, but also businesses wanted to consolidate their B2B into one platform. So this diversification of channels is really where Shopify has spent a lot of time, investment, and focus to build a platform that they can again sell online D2C, they can sell retail, they can sell B2B, they can even sell in collaboration with other merchants on Shopify. So point of sale is such a key one. And I think what's been really interesting to see is those pure play darlings that have been born of online and sort of reached this threshold of maybe diminishing returns from a customer acquisition cost online. We know we're sort of towards the end of the year, peak season, ad costs are going to be through the roof. But
Yeah.
hey, did you know that the old traditional brick and mortar way to acquire customers has a ton of benefits and it's probably cheaper? So that our point of sale channel has been around for a long time, but it's had really 2 to 3 really strong years of activation and focus. And we're seeing a lot of merchants come to it in droves, not just for their, first time flagship, but again, 10, 20, 30, 100 stores. So I think you'll see a lot more of Shopify POS in the market pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I'd love to know how these strategies come about. So, with the brands that you're working with, what is the relationship like and who's kind of leading the strategic planning? So, is it a collaboration between yourself and, Shopify team and the brand? Are you finding that, founders or leaders in the business are coming to you and saying, Geordie, we've got this challenge, we need a solution? How are they being kept up to date with the developments at Shopify? How does that all play out?
It's hard, right? Shopify at our last editions released 150 new features. So it's part
Wow.
of our role as, me in my role, but also our merchant success team to keep, not just owners, but e-com operators or retail managers across all of these features and functions. So whether it makes sense for, right now today or later down the track, they're informed and they're ready to go. It's a lot to keep up with, right? And we see like I suppose, a full collaboration of different roles. So a lot of committees again across the IT suite, retail, digital, e-commerce, all in the room. And I think the brands that do well realize that they can't work in silo anymore. It's not retail and retail owned sales. It's not e-com and e-com owned sales. It's collaboration and how do we make our technology work for us in harmony and unison. And again, one of the key value props is Shopify, and something that really probably a lot of your listeners can assimilate with is it's nothing worse than being given a gift card that only works online or only works in store, or being able to only return to a warehouse or not be able to return to a store no matter where you purchased it. Again, consumers don't see brands as a channel; they see them as a brand. So
Yeah.
it's fun. It's really fun to give them a platform that allows them to sell where they want and how they want and meet their buyers where they need.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a really powerful kind of collaborative relationship that you've just shared there. I'm sure our listeners are thinking, how do I get to work with a Geordie at Shopify? So, what level does a brand need to be at? We're going to talk about Shopify Plus a little bit later. But yeah, what level does a brand need to be at as a Shopify client to be working with someone like yourself in this role?
Yeah, there's different flavors and versions of me at
Yeah.
Shopify. I work with our largest accounts in ANZ, but um, I would say that there's a lot of folks at Shopify that will appear at the right time.
Jordy, I'd love to dive into the brand side now with, your background and you've got the balance between the creative and the analytical side. How crucial do you feel building a strong brand identity is in ecom rather than relying too heavily on the performance marketing side?
Hell, you got Liz.
We could do a
It's
whole podcast just on this, right?
yeah, absolutely. I would. It's an age old question. I'll firmly sit on the fence and say you need both. But what I would say, where hopefully it gives value, is that look at where you are in terms of maturity of a brand. And ideal state would be that you would, in my opinion, focus on that brand first, find that first 100, 1,000 customers that are in your ideal customer profile, and they can build a community, from there. Not to say that performance marketing can't activate and accelerate that at certain times, but if you're really looking, for your brand to have things like long-term loyalty, differentiation in market, you want to price at a premium place where you're not getting driven to the bottom because no one wins there, and you're wanting to
Mm.
drive things like word of mouth and organic traffic, and hey, it costs less marketing dollars over time, focusing on brand from the start is critically important. So it is a little bit of both, where performance marketing does make sense if you want to scale and accelerate. But what I would say is just be wary, because if you want to accelerate, but you're bringing in the cost sensitive customers that are actually driving down your customer lifetime value, and they're the ones that end up in all your support tickets, and they're the ones having returns and exchanges and all the rest. Just be deliberate about when and why and what that makes sense. And again, coming back to those economics, knowing your numbers will give you the confidence to drive that.
Yeah. Are there any examples that you have of brands that you've worked with where you've seen really powerful kind of brand DNA and community building play out?
One of the brands, LSKD, is incredible at that. So if you look at their website and you see all the local initiatives that they have across different gyms, or again, new store activations, and again, those community wellness plays, they show up in the areas that their ideal customers are and want to be. And we know that when we're buying a piece of fashion, we want that to be emblematic and amplifying what we believe is important to the world, and this is what I value. So I think the way they harness community is incredibly important, and it's all through their values. It's again, it's literally written on the wall at their HQ. I've seen it, so yeah, they see it, they live it, and they breathe it. So yeah, watching that team rise over the last particularly 3-4 years has been really one. If you want a case study as to how to amplify growth in the right directions, they'd be one I'd certainly spend some time investigating and trying to reverse engineer.
Yeah, absolutely agree. They've done a phenomenal job, and I've loved tuning into so many podcasts about the Alice KD journey. So, yeah, definitely an amazing success story there and good case study. Jordy, you mentioned before that Shopify. There's around 150 new features that come out, and there's so much to keep on top of. But can we share with our audience some of the significant shifts that you've been observing from a consumer demand perspective across retail and e-com, and how Shopify is kind of responding on that level to empower the brands to kind of serve the customer better?
Yeah, even year on year, consumers are changing so much. We first commissioned our Australian retail report last year, and even there was some significant swings between last year's data and this year's data. So some examples of that, to give you some context on how big that study is. We surveyed 200 plus senior business executives and decision makers, and 1,000 consumers in Australia, and what we found, that 79% of Australians are actually cutting down on something to save money, whilst more than half of those consumers are looking for the best value when they shop. So I think the fun part for brands to try and figure out is understanding what those consumers value, and we know that in this sensitive market, consumers do really value discounts, but they also value customer service, and they also
Mm.
value loyalty, and they also value differentiation and early access, and those sorts of things. So if you can, I often speak to multi-brand retailers that are not just selling probably a selection of their own home goods, but other brands. How are you differentiating yourself? If you're not differentiated on your customer service angle, then really you've got no differentiation in market, and you're going to have a really hard time standing out and really driving that sustainable growth and communities we talked about with LSKD in a sustainable, profitable manner. So differentiation in service is key, and I think that it's often something that is, again, sort of put to the bottom of the list when it really should be flipped and put on top. Another notable number that I saw in this report was 43% of Australian consumers prefer shopping in stores, which was a 5% jump on last year.
Mm.
While shopping online remains as popular as ever, and then 26% of them like both shopping equally. So again, I've espoused some of the reasons why having one platform is valuable in terms of being able to serve a customer with gift cards and returns and exchanges, and feel like you're treated as a brand, not just a single channel. But
Yeah.
I think there's so many brands that leave opportunities on the table where we see, here's an interesting number. We see a lot of brands that once they shift a buyer from a single channel buyer, so they only shop online, they don't shop in store. Once they shop multi-channel in another channel, often that customer lifetime value increases by 80% on average.
Wow.
So yeah, it is a bit of a a showstopper. So if you can
Yeah.
think about how to drive your buyers to shop cross-channel, there's an immense amount of benefit for those customers. So on the flip side of that, if you don't have an experience that feels the same and feels harmonious, you're potentially going to lose them as they drop off because they're like, this doesn't feel like the premium experience I had in store or online. So it speaks to the need for consistency of that retail theatre, whether that be online or in store.
I would love to gain your insight into brick and mortar retail. So what you've just mentioned there, pretty compelling stat that 43% of customers, prefer to shop in store. With so you've got you would have brands that are pure play e-com only, but then you've also got your brands you work with that have got multi-channel. For those who've already got retail stores, what are you seeing around the optimism around opening new stores from, say, let's just say 2025 onwards? And with the pure play e-com brands, are you seeing this appetite to, open the first store, or they've got a store already, open the second store? What's it like? What's the sentiment like out there?
Yeah, I'll speak to the probably the overwhelming positive one first, which is those pure play online darlings that, again, it might just be a customer's acquisition cost conversation where they've reached a point where the online channel is just costing too much and they're reaching a point of diminishing returns. So actually opening a physical retail store makes sense financially and economically. But we know that a physical retail store gives brands, particularly in fashion, the ability to create this, sort of scientific laboratory where they get this beautiful ability to view and observe their customers, touch, feel, see, validate the quality of garments and finish, and being able to have a customer experience laid on top around here's the story of manufacturing and ethics and here's our brand origin story. It's incredible. I could again espouse the values all day. They're really getting excited about retail as a channel, and for them particularly, retail is a billboard. It's authenticity, it's credibility, it's something that's physical and tangible that they can touch, feel, see, and if they buy something, they know that they can take it back in store if they have that ability. So again, if you look at the online orders around a new physical store that opens up, on average for a new for a pure play brand that opens their first store, it's like 14% spike in online orders in the surrounding postcodes of that physical store. So you can't sort of not look at those numbers and just be
Mm.
astounded around what that looks like. From a sort of retail led, again, I use legacy in an affectionate way. I think they're excited. They know that they've had a lot of systems and technology and operational inefficiencies, and having the ability to connect those up and leverage technology that again is being commoditized and available. I love it. I love putting the technology in their hands and just seeing their eyes light up. It's like you're saying I can do click and collect. You can saying I can do ship from store. You're saying I can, create a cart with a customer and all of a sudden they're disrupted, or their little 4-year-old like mine disrupts them, they need to leave, and it's like, hey, here's the cart, we'll send it to you. You've got to look after little one, and the checkout will be pre-built in your email, and you can check out at your convenience and leisure. Like, the ability to convert those sales in the time and space that makes sense to you is so valuable. I would say the ones that are winning are the ones that really value loyalty, and they have the ability to drive a loyalty program omni-channel. So I just feel even with the brands that I speak to that are sort of considered large in our region, so many of them aren't even today deploying a loyalty program, and I think it's just the biggest turnkey. Not turnkey, the biggest opportunity that brands, again, they put to the bottom of the list, but really if they prioritized it, would be an incredible growth lever for them and to be able to drive that loyalty and customer lifetime value.
Yeah, I'd love to dive in a little bit more into the loyalty programs that you've seen, be successful, because I do work with a few brands who are still on the fence around loyalty, and I think sometimes it can just be put into the too hard basket. So there's a lot of technology now, right? So I'm just thinking about Yotpo, for example, that can be integrated with Shopify. But is there anything else you can share around that? So maybe some of the apps, the platforms that can be used to support loyalty programs, and maybe some of the really phenomenal results that you've seen. And what are they based around? Are they around that the customer is just so excited that they're going to get loyalty points or dollars back into their email that they can spend on their next purchase, or is it more community orientated? What's leading in terms of strategies?
Yeah, I think, again, I say loyalty is the biggest probably growth lever that I see from a retention perspective, but it needs to be approachable. It needs to be, aspirational. It needs to feel valuable to the customer to be able to put that in. I've seen so many loyalty programs over the time that just sort of slap bang gold, silver, bronze, and you're like,
Yep.
oh, it just feels icky. It's actually doing your brand a disservice. So the ones that carefully build programs and use platforms like the Yotpo or the Loyalty Lion or Smile of the world, or even extend into really strong clienteling tools like a Browse or an Omnio or those sorts of platforms that are building into our point of sale. You can build an incredible experience that is so tailored and contextual, and even things like if I think of loyalty, I always sort of think of Culture Kings and some of the aspirational free gift with purchases that they've built or reach a certain level of membership tier, and you've got, again, it's perceivably a low cost item for them, but it's just so high value in the customer's mind. If I wind the clock back to when we were in agency land, we worked with Zane Robe, and they brought out a promotion where it was um, spend $500 and be part of this wolf club, which you got this sort of wolf ring. And for me at the time, I was just so ingrained and infatuated, where I was sort of wanting to you know rather than spend $270, I'm like, how can I get this wolf ring, which I know in my head probably cost them single digits in terms of dollars, but it was just an incredible way to capture hearts, minds, and wallet spend. So loyalty and incentives and free gifts of purchase. The brands that do it well know their customer inside out and activate, like I've
Mm.
just explained.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, isn't it? It's who's your customer. You've got to know them intimately, and it's what's going to resonate with them. What do they want? Is it the community? Is it the rewards? Is it a combination of? Is it money can't buy experiences? You've really got to tailor it to your audience and make sure that it's going to be something that resonates with them, of course. So, Jordy, you've mentioned a few things, a few apps there. So, while we're on that topic, as businesses scale, technology transformation becomes even more critical to their business. How do you see AI innovation and, of course, all of the new technologies that are continuing to come at businesses, continuing to reshape e-com in and around digital marketing? And how do brands, again, keep their finger on the pulse here of what's new and what they should be even looking at implementing in their businesses?
Yeah, I would say if you're not using AI individually in your business already, you're sort of behind, and you're probably even using it without even knowing. So what I would say is technology like AI drives efficiency. So if you're doing menial tasks that a human or you and I shouldn't be doing, and you can offload that to machines to free you up for higher value strategic type tasks, like speaking to customers, like sales, like marketing, those sorts of things, that I would say is as a lens, look at where technology can again take away those tasks that are toilsome and you shouldn't be doing. If I look at how, again, the ad platforms are, their machine learning is incredibly heightened by again, these large language models, and you can quickly get better results and learn what ad sets are working and what audience are working and what not. So being more agile and efficient as to what those marketing platforms like Meta are doing. What I would say with AI is just make sure that make sure that technology is not replacing what is important from a human connection
Mm.
side. So we build brand loyalty through connection, through community, through in-store experiences, through customer support. Um, there are obviously reasons to use AI to a degree. It might be to self-serve something. It might be to get, 40% through a customer support ticket and then get, sort of handed over to a human to escalate. But um, think about where those important touch points are in your brand, and don't just leave it up to the robots, because
Mhm.
um, they just can't do it as well yet.
Such an important message there. Don't forget the human element, everybody. We're not about to be replaced by our avatars just yet. So I don't think it's too far away, but not just yet. Geordie, are there any apps that you could mention for our audience? Because, just thinking about technology and again, efficiency, coming back to serving the customer, maybe specifically online for this one. There's been a few new innovations that have been on a lot of our clients' radars this year, like things like Try with Mirror. We mentioned earlier Yotpo, and then there's Tolstoy around the video creation, and there's apps for upselling and bundling like Rebuy and so many others. Are there any favorites? So think about the brands, again, the leading fashion brands that you've been working with. Has there been an adoption of certain apps that you've seen that have really helped them to kind of go to that next level, or back into our, initial topic, serve their customers, at a higher level?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying seeing all those brands and more within our community give that efficiency and give newfound strengths to those brands. What I can speak to is natively to what we call, again, productivity tools in both Shopify Magic and Sidekick. So if you haven't yet dug into it, Shopify Magic is a tool to help you, transform image backgrounds using AI and write better product descriptions at absolute lightning speed. So we know that content creation and building images, it's incredible what you can build right now. And again, I would say don't give it all to AI, but it can be a tool that can give you the skeleton of what you need to hand off to producers and editors and shooters to give you what you need. And yeah, well, I've sat there before trying to write meaniest copywriting, and it's notorious. It takes a long time, and but if you can give a tool that can give you 70-80% of the way there, it's definitely worth having a look at.
Yeah,
The sec-
love.
Absolutely. The second one I mentioned is Shopify Sidekick. So it's in early access, and as the name suggests, it's an AI commerce assistant trained in Shopify. So it knows how to tackle tasks like creating discount codes and telling you how your store's performing, and gives you that sidekick to make better business decisions. And you can use that in everyday language. So you can type in prompts around, what are my best selling products on a Tuesday, or what have you. So particularly for startups and obviously scale ups, to have someone that can give you that at the touch of a few keystrokes. I'm super excited to see how that expands into general availability, and how particularly fashion merchants take it and run with it.
They both sound really powerful. So Shopify Magic and Sidekick. I need a sidekick myself, actually.
I'd like one too. So
We all do. Now, Geordie, we are on the door knock of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, so I can't let today's conversation go by without diving into this topic. I'd love to pick your brains and hear anything that you've seen is new on the scene when it comes to this, major promotional period. So, have you noticed any new strategies? Again, maybe even new technologies that can be used at during this promotional period that we feel could really help brands to optimize, which is such, I guess it's a crucial date on the calendar for retail.
it is. It's on a doorstop, and some brands have already started. So it's incredible. At Shopify, we actually saw $9.3 billion in sales over the Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend last year, and that's in USD. So,
Wow.
that's a lot of volume and strategies. Amongst that, apparel and accessories were certainly amongst the hottest product categories, and I'd personally expect that to continue. I wouldn't say I've seen anything super creative and out there to date, and I think hopefully I'm looking forward to being surprised and wowed as they start to roll out as we get closer to the date. But what I would say is that brands are becoming a bit wiser to how they're deploying their strategies. So again, I think, well, I know in Australia we're even when I started Shopify, 7+ years ago, BFCM, not all of our merchants even knew what it was as a shopping event. So, we've quickly caught up in terms of global adaptation, but also we are a lot wiser to, hey, you don't have to have 40% off everything when you're discounting your core selling items and just throwing away profitability and margin. So just seeing some refinement in terms of, hey, keep your core lines, particularly, the way that the weekend falls this year, it's actually contracted the peak selling season, by 5 days into Christmas. So it's going to be a really sort of spiky end to the year, hopefully for the brands. So I would say, having said all that, let me say this is that the ability and the refinement around spend and save, or spend X, get Y, and free gift with purchase, they're becoming a lot more refined and a lot more, I suppose, remarkable. So execution is something that I'm seeing brands really think about and plan. So I'm excited around probably just seeing more consistency in what feels like this sort of cautious optimism. Do we go early? Do we not? Sort of, it's a little bit cat and mouse at times. I'm looking forward to, again, some consistent execution, brands, hitting their targets, and then being able to parlay the win of customers they've acquired, but and those sales that they've converted from their existing database, and building that, throughout Christmas period and beyond.
Mm. Well, what do you think about the brands who do go early? Because we're recording this at the end of October, and I got all the text messages on the weekend of, Black Friday's come early.
As did I. Yeah.
And I'm just like, how early can this get? Because we've also got Click Frenzy this year that is in the lead up to, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And as you said, then it's heavily into the festive season promotional period. And I think there is that, as you said, it's like, should we, shouldn't we, as brands? And there's always, I think, that conflict every year. How early is too early? Do you have a point of view on that, with brands, yeah, basically, up and out there this weekend?
Purely my own, but if you're going to go, you need to go for a reason. And I get there's advantages in terms of speed to market and getting there early. It does feel like to me that there's sort of this pent up want to spend with consumers. So being able to make sure that you've got the right promotions that make sense for those ideal customers does make sense to me. But again, it just comes down to, what are your targets? What are your expectations? Making sure your inventory is going to be there. And I get it right. Everyone's so focused on what this means for the event. But if you stretch out, what does the cohort of these customers look like? Are these customers that, if you're acquiring new customers, are these ones that are going to be price sensitive forever and a day and only going to buy you on discount or sale, whether that's 4 times a year from a seasonal campaign perspective, or are these going to be ones that you are confident you can drive to be full RRP customers and going to be sustainable and going to give you the word of mouth and association that you want. So again, just the classic, just asking questions to brands to make sure they're aware of why they're doing, and hopefully that comes through in their results. So again, completely fence-sitted on whether to go early or whether to not, but I would just make sure you're asking the big questions of yourself when and if you go.
Yeah, it makes complete sense to fence it because it is individual to a business. It's, what are your objectives? There's so many different dynamics, and what's your inventory situation? What are your reasons why, if you were going to go early? All of those things. Just on that topic of, maximizing sales periods and scalability, we have a lot of Australian brands that will look to going global. They might max out here in the Australian market, and of course they're looking, to international to take their businesses to the next level. And I know that Shopify plays a big part in, Australian brands reaching global markets. Do you have any, insights for our audience, Geordie, around, taking the first steps there?
I think the tools now, particularly these days, again, from when I started, are just so much more approachable to test and learn, and if it makes sense, double down on those investments. So
Yeah.
if you're launching into a new market, making sure that things are localized from a currency perspective, from copywriting, from imagery, from even seasonality. I see so many brands that just they launch into market and they wait and expect results, but they're actually portraying the exact wrong image and disrespecting that market. So
Mm.
I would say, again, if you look up your Google Analytics or Shopify Analytics and see where you're getting a ton of traffic from, but not many buyers from, if you're selling internationally, whether that be New York or an LA buyer, that's some pretty telling trends. And over the years, doing well domestically in Australia and expanding to US and hopefully trying to build that business is a typical growth path we see. But maybe test and learn in some of these environments, depending on whether you see yourself as an east side, aesthetic, or west side, or middle America. I think there's some easy ways to test and learn with the tools that are certainly available. Again, I'm going to be the bad cop and say, hey, that's cool, but certainly think about how you're going to fulfill that. So if you're looking to go into the US, they're used to very fast delivery. Are your customers going to be willing to wait a week if it's shipping from Australia? What does your reverse logistics processes look like? What do returns and exchanges? Are they going into a 3PL? You're receiving them back into Australia. All of these are hard questions to answer when you're doing it for the first time and you're in scale up mode. But having some idea of how you're going to handle that in a pretty high expectation demanding market will give you a better chance of better success. But again, I see many that launch with success. Actually, a lot of brands that do well here domestically, and they might already be selling internationally in the US through online, and they drive a pop up, and for reasons we discussed before, they launch a pop up, and all of a sudden consumers can touch, feel, see, experience, and they get this this beautiful mecca of brand awareness, and they're away in market. So yeah, online first, but don't be afraid to activate with a short-term pop-up or something like that.
I love that. I love that you've mentioned that, because I was going to ask you about the physical presence in the market, because I agree. Definitely agree with what you've said about respecting that market. You have to localize it. You can't just expect, put some Facebook ads up to the US market and magically it's going to happen. I think having a presence there and building your brand in that market is so important. So likewise with the pop-up store, it might even be, if you're looking at wholesale, to be looking at a trade show, just, respect the market, have a presence there. And like anything, it's going to take time and it's going to take a full strategy and most likely a team, to really work that market as well. We know that Shopify Plus supports expanding into global markets, but I wanted to ask you about Shopify Plus, because I get this question all the time from my clients. It's like, when is the right time to invest in that next level of Shopify? Can we share some insights there with our audience so that they can kind of maybe do a bit of a self-assessment if they're not on Shopify Plus yet?
Yeah, it's certainly a nuanced conversation, and I would say if you're unsure, again, speak to our team on that. But typically, we're seeing merchants that move to Shopify Plus. They're looking to really benefit from things like, managing complexity across international markets, as we just spoke about. They want a platform that they can sell B2B and D2C, and even obviously retail on the same storefront. They want to customize their checkout with some, cross-sell, upsell features. They want to really drive that to the full degree. Support is a big one. So if you're wanting to level up to priority support, if you want to access our merchant success program and have technical teams, being able to support you 24/7, that's with priority. That's a key reason. And of course, there's financial relief in terms of lower transaction fees. So there are a bunch of the reasons that brands consider us. And yeah, if you're unsure, certainly speak to the team and we can help you figure that out. But it is an important decision, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Thank you for that. Now, Jordy, I want to switch channels and talk about mindset. I know that you're very passionate about professional, personal development. So I'd love your insights into mindset from an entrepreneurial perspective. What kind of key traits do you see that, entrepreneurs need and really embrace when it comes to mindset? And then I'd love to dive into what you do from a mindset and wellness perspective to operate at the high level you do in such a demanding role.
Thank you for the back pat. Always happy to take that. Um, in terms of the founders and entrepreneurs that I've seen execute with incredible success, I think they are willing to bet on themselves and are willing to take those calculated risks. So they know their customer, they back themselves. It was, example of that is, during COVID, they're going to, maximize pre-orders. They're going to air freight stuff in at X amount of cost because they know that their customers need it and it's time to make hay. So to see some of those big bets during the time without all the information, which is pretty hard to do, that's one of the key mindset traits that I've seen, um, very strong in a lot of the entrepreneurs and operators that I work with. The second one I'm thinking about is they are fanatical about that customer experience. So they obsess over the details. They're constantly, from a tech analogy, they're dog fooding their own experience. So they're going in store, they're mystery shopping, they're shopping online, and they're making lists of tons of things that they wish were better to really drive a beautiful and remarkable retail experience. So they finesse over the details, and I think those operators that are, again, high enough strategically but in the weeds enough to really care, they're the ones that do well and thriving on change. It's actually sort of a value that we have at Shopify. Technology, we need to be bleeding edge and on our toes, but we know that, again, it's all the buzzwords of being able to pivot, and they're adaptable, and the market is not always going to be in your favor, but how do you overcome what are barriers, or what is seen as problems, turn them into opportunities, and make them strengthen themselves. So in terms of sort of personal adaptation of that, something that we at Shopify, we have a book bar, which is a bar of books, as a book bar is, but where one of them is really recommended is anti-fragile. So if, for example, if something breaks, how can we put it back? So say a vase breaks, how can we put it back together so that when it's stronger, when it's put back together, it's stronger, something like when a bone heals. So you see a lot of anti-fragility and some, real gumption amongst the business owners that I see.
It's that return on resilience, right? It's like you got to work on that resilience muscle over time. And do you have any specific practices, routines that you do on the daily or the weekly that help you to kind of work at that level?
Liz, you've known me for a few years now, and I'm a pretty competitive guy. So I always need to be, physically active, and I think being physically active allows me to be mentally active. So at my best, I'm in the gym sort of 6 days a week, which allows me to operate my best for my family and for my work and for my friends. My humble brag is I've just completed the Melbourne Marathon, so I know I'm a little crazy and pretty old, so it was good to tick that off. So I think something a little bit more passive in my older age. Just being my next goal is being 10% better than my mates at golf will do me well. I'm starting from a long way back, but that will be something that will be a fun, endless pursuit, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. The marathon. Congratulations. That's
Thanks. It
awesome.
was certainly a long way. So yeah,
What was the recovery like after that?
I actually went on holiday the next day up in Broadbeach, so I spent as much time as I could in the pool. So it worked out well. But yeah, it was a long recovery. I think I'm still recovering despite it being a
Wow.
couple of weeks ago.
That's inspirational, Geordie. Well done. Well done. Now,
Thank you.
Geordie, to wrap up, I can't believe how quickly this time's gone, but finally, what excites you most about the future of e-commerce and the continued Shopify journey?
It's again, it sounds boring, but I think working at Shopify, I'm surrounded by exceptional operators and exceptional merchants. So they and partners by extension as well. So being in that environment just drives willingness to want and learn and continuously, get better. So particularly Shopify, our ecosystem is very collaborative and sharing, and always has been, and something that attracted me to Shopify when I first joined. If I think about the future and what that looks like, it would be trying to stay on top of what AI looks like in terms of that transformation and efficiency. I mentioned things like Shopify Editions, that is a biannual release of typically 100 plus features. So being certainly being across that. Um, I'm obviously incredibly bullish. So if you are thinking about physical retail, look at our point of sale platform and how that might be able to activate you, whether it's a market stall or whether that's a 4-day pop-up or 4-week pop-up or full-time physical retail, or redeploying that across your network. We're seeing some really, really incredible results, and transformational is an easy word to throw around, but it is really exciting to see traditional retail-led business that were operating on legacy technologies have a piece of technology in their hands that, as we talked about before, can allow them to throw the countertop away if they want, use it in a hybrid sense, and just really meet their buyers where they stand, and just really change that retail customer experience for them to be remarkable and something that they're super proud of. So again, a lot of things I'm excited about. But again, retail is pretty close to my heart. I'm excited to see a lot of these traditional retail led brands change the way they operate and be able to give that technology to startups and scale ups is awesome out of the gate too.
So much to be excited about, and so many great insights there, Jordy. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being so generous with your time and your knowledge today and joining me for the last hour plus. It's been great to reconnect after all these years. Congratulations on your journey at Shopify. What an amazing organization, an amazing asset for any brand or business out there. Jordy, for our listeners, how can they stalk you online? Where can they connect with you?
Well, thanks, Liz. Firstly, it's my honor to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. LinkedIn is best for me. So if you want to chat retail, e-commerce, Shopify, please do so.
Yeah, be sure to follow Jordy, everyone. He puts some amazing content out there, and you've done lots of podcasts lately. So we're going to link all of those in the show notes, because we've had a different conversation today, but you've dived into so many amazing strategies with other podcast hosts. So thank you, Jordy. Thank you again. And we'll catch up again soon.
Really appreciate it, Liz. Speak soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast. We'd love to keep connected. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Fashion Equipped. And if you'd like to find out more about our Start Your Fashion Business program and your mentor collective, head to our website fashionequipped.com.au. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with others, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Let's do this together. Let's make the fashion business your business.
This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.